In a really short time, we were able to support decreasing new hire ramp time, new hire time to first opportunity by 47%. We decreased new hire time to first win by 11%, increased average deal size by 34%, increased our win rates by 11%, and this is the one our SVP of sales loves the most, 28% more sellers are hitting quota.
Welcome to the Enablement Edge, the go-to resource for enablement and go-to-market pros. We're bringing you the secrets, strategies, and tactics that drive meaningful impact. You'll get valuable insights and expertise from enablement leaders so you can become an effective change agent, turn strategy into reality, and transform your organization for the better. On today's episode of the Enablement Edge, we're talking about what it takes to build an enablement function from scratch, to be the first one in, the first boots on the ground building this critical capability. I'm joined by my friend and colleague, Amber Mellano. Amber, it's so great to have you back. I know you are an absolute expert in all sorts of enablement-related capabilities and conversations. And our guest today is another expert, Nicole Ward, Senior Director of Enablement at OSV. Nicole was the first one in, and she built enablement in really challenging circumstances. She really unpacked for us what the situation was, how she approached it, and she delivered some tremendous results that we're really excited to share with you. Amber, having just gone through this conversation with Nicole, what really jumped out at you?
Wow. I mean, she is such a powerhouse, Steve. Like you said, she just walked right into a blank slate and she came away with gold medal after gold medal. We don't want to spoil the amazing story that she can tell you. But I think the thing that impressed me the most was her confidence in her plan. She knew, even in the interview, she told us she knew exactly what she needed technology-wise to achieve the success that they had agreed on. And sure enough, she walked in and she delivered. And I think I really liked her approach to making sure that she was aligning with her stakeholders at every turn and really kind of keeping her eye on the ball, but as a team, like in that team environment. And I think that that ultimately is what really led to the success that they saw. And it was so fun to hear, a woman in business, we always like to, champion success, but even better when we get to see like a woman truly in her element. She walked in there with a plan, she executed that plan, and she delivered. And it was really fun to hear her story. I'm excited for everybody to hear her tell us about the success that she met and the plan that she put in action.
This is a good one. Strategy, execution, collaboration, and tremendous success. Let's jump in. Nicole, thank you so much for joining us on the Enablement Edge.
I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
We're super excited to have you here, Nicole. I can't wait for our conversations. I wanted to start us off with just kind of a question that we ask all of our guests about enablement and the enablement space, which we know is still a growing, evolving space for sure. And every company does it a little bit differently, and they have a little different level of maturity. But I think we can all agree that the ultimate goal of enablement is to ensure that we are getting and keeping as much business as possible, right? And so I'd love to hear more from you, just kind of at a very high level strategic perspective. What do you think is the key to success in that way? And tell us from your perspective what you have found to be the most important aspect of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, we'll get into the OSV story in a little while, but I think no matter where you are, no matter how established your enablement organization is, I think the key is to obtain that executive buy-in or stakeholder alignment early and continue to check in with them often. You can build your program, you can present it to them, but if it's not aligned with their expectations or their goals, then it can quickly fall flat.
Yeah, totally. You're essentially marching down some separate road. No matter how successful you are, you didn't ultimately deliver on the business goals. That's great. I'm excited to hear you tell us a little bit more about your experiences and how you were able to get such great buy-in from your stakeholders. That'll be exciting.
I tell you, there was a lot of excitement a couple of weeks ago when Nicole spoke at the Seismic City Tour event in New York. She was main stage alongside our CEO, Doug Winter. And I tell you, it was a great story, Nicole, sincerely. I knew in that moment we had to have you on the show. The challenges you faced, the solutions you brought, and probably most impressive of all, the outcomes you achieved were true mic drop moments. And yeah, in that moment, it was like, okay, we're getting Nicole on the enablement edge, and we're going to be able to take a little more time than you had in New York to unpack this. So let's dig right into that. Tell us about OSV and your role and what you walked into when you started there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am the Senior Director of Revenue Enablement at OSV. I was hired in November of 2022, and I was the first formal enablement role at the company. So needless to say, there was a ton of runway for enablement to make an impact. And I started as a one-woman show and thankfully was able to hire a team shortly thereafter. But I came at a time of immense transformation. We had just sold off our professional services organization, and for a very long time, since the inception of the company, that was what we led with. We led with professional services within our customers' Workday environment. We would implement Workday for them. That was our land strategy. And then we would expand into our BPaaS, business process as a service solution. So our customers want to outsource payroll or benefit administration, accounts payable to us. But we were basically flipping that entire go-to-market strategy on its head. And that announcement came the week before I joined. So that's what I got to walk into.
So a complete change in the go-to-market strategy.
Totally.
And am I getting this right, that some of your most significant competitors previously were now potential partners?
100%.
This is not just about changing your messaging, changing your website, changing some talk tracks used by sellers. This is a fundamental change in your go-to-market.
Yeah, 100%. We were going to market against certain competitors, and now they were potential alliance partners. So at the same time that I joined, we had new product marketing leadership, we had new alliances leadership. So we're all coming together at the right time to really take the company to the next level. And
there was no existing enablement team or function?
Absolutely none, no.
Wow. And did you know this? I mean, is this what you signed up for? Was this a surprise when you walked in? Oh, hey, Nicole, guess what? Or did you know this and welcome this? And was this part of why you wanted to go there?
Yeah, I'm not crazy, I swear. I was excited. I'd spent 9 years at Citrix, very established enablement organization, 2,000 enablement customers in quota-carrying roles. I was one leader of many within an established enablement team. And I feel like I'd hit my ceiling there. And I was excited when I saw the opportunity to build an enablement program from the ground up and really make an impact with a smaller team. So yeah, I signed up for it.
How small was that team?
My team at OSV are quota-carrying customers on the sales side, and the customer success side would be about 150 enablement consumers at OSV.
And one enablement provider, you.
At the time, yes.
Before we go any deeper, I want to just get your take on, you are ahead of the curve, and much like we do at Seismic as well, you're supporting not only the sales engine, but the customer success engine. And that's kind of a growing arena. We even see that the Sales Enablement Society has renamed themselves to the Revenue Enablement Society. Tell me a little bit, is that a change from what you came from Citrix with? Was that part of one of the genius of your approach to enablement at OSV?
Yeah, when I was at Citrix, they were completely separate organizations, and I actually got to bridge those gaps because we leveraged the same enablement tools, and that was my niche at Citrix. I was the leader of the enablement tools function, and so I actually got to see both sides of the full revenue enablement picture. And so when I came to OSV, my title was actually Senior Director of Sales Enablement, but very quickly after I joined, people started to sniff around the programs that we were rolling out, and we extended some of that to the customer success team. And it's been awesome. And now that we have these new partner alliances, we're extending some of that enablement out to our partners as well. So it really is that full revenue enablement picture.
Nice. I love that. Well, that said, let's get into it. Tell us, what did you do on day one when you landed at feet on the ground at OSV? Talk to us about what your vision was for enablement there.
Actually, I can speak to what I did in my interview process at OSV. I actually sat in front of the interviewing committee and I talked about how I needed an enablement platform, and it would be Seismic. I wanted the foundational platform that I knew and loved from my Citrix days. I trusted that this was going to be a great foundational program to roll out new programs through. And so I started talking about that very early on. And more so, I was just kind of trying to understand, is this company willing to not just make an investment in me, but in the technology and the programs that I want to deliver? Because so often people get into these roles and they end up being a jack of all trades, master of none. And enablement professionals find ourselves doing all kinds of stuff that maybe isn't actually enablement, or at least how some would define it. And so I made it clear very early on that I wanted to see an investment around a platform like Seismic to build and deliver all of our programs through. And fortunately, I was successful with that and was able to obtain budget to implement that program very early in my time at OSV. Within 2 months, we implemented and rolled out. So it was quick. But yeah, I kind of came in and said, let's start with this. We need to build something from the ground up. And it's all about building that foundation if you think about the house analogy. And I established what I call kind of my pillars of enablement. You know, what does that look like? And these are the pillars of your foundation. And then any projects or initiatives technically have to fall within one of those pillars.
What are those pillars?
Yeah, for my team, the pillars are tools, training, content, and I have a readiness pillar. And that kind of captures a whole bunch of different things. So how do we communicate out the established content, training, and tools? How do we drive adoption around those things? And how do we measure that to make sure that we're iterating and never just setting and forgetting it? So yeah, tools, training, content, readiness.
And in those early days, did you start with a focus on all 4 pillars, or did you start with 1 or 2 of them and grow from there?
All 4. We had key initiatives within each 4. And when I say key, I mean one big thing we wanted to knock out in the first 6 months, and then a couple things added on from there. But yeah, I think obviously starting with that foundational platform in the tools category being Seismic, and then we needed a new hire onboarding program. I mean, we didn't have one. People were coming into a sales role or a customer success role at OSV, and they were getting that day and a half with HR. How do you use your laptop? How do you submit your T&E and your vacation time? Who do you need to know at the HR department, essentially, but really know role-specific onboarding. And so we had to build that from scratch, and obviously leveraging our tools to do that, we had to develop the training and the content and the readiness to roll them out. So we had projects within each of the pillars, but we weren't trying to boil the ocean.
And given that you were a one-woman team at the beginning, I know it grew from there, surely you couldn't have done all this on your own. You must have enlisted the support of some other individuals and some other teams. What did that look like?
Absolutely. I think in enablement, we are bridge builders and we are kind of serial collaborators. So I got in there very quickly and booked meetings with people across the organization to understand what they do. How can I learn from them? What can they learn from me? How can I support them? What are their goals? Can I attach myself to their goals, especially if they were key stakeholders in enablement? So yeah, it's all about building your internal network. And once I had established that, building little tiger teams to help me get my projects across the finish line. So essentially rolling out Seismic was huge. I don't own all of the content that the field's going to use. So I was attached at the hip with marketing and with some of our other field teams that were producing content and trying to kind of rein it all into one place.
That's interesting. That kind of makes me think about the process piece that you were, especially at the beginning, you were now effectively imposing a process on those folks you were collaborating with. I love that serial collaborator term, by the way. That's spot on. How did that grow? Did you meet any resistance? Were they like, oh, let's do this? And how did you kind of win the hearts and minds of these teams that were now having to interact with you in a new position they hadn't previously really been mindful of, I bet?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I think coming in with proof points from my time at Citrix and from leveraging a platform like Seismic that I was planning to roll everything out through, a lot of people didn't have familiarity with it. Especially, we had a lot of people who'd been at the company for a long time, and then we had some new people that came, and they all have different tools that they've worked with and different programs they've supported. So coming in with conviction, and I really truly believed in what I was putting forth as the right steps to take building an enablement program. And I think I put my sales hat on and I sold it to them and made sure that I had proof points to back it up. Like, this is how we were successful at Citrix, and this is why we rolled it out this way. And this is what I learned. This is what I wouldn't do. This is what I would do from those learnings. And so having that kind of real talk with them, got that early buy-in from various stakeholders as well as the leadership team. And then obviously just maintaining that partnership and constant ongoing open communication.
Sounds like communication is really your superpower here, and being able to level with everybody. This is what I came from. This is the experience I've had.
Yeah.
That's a great way to win them over. And data, we all love data, essentially.
Oh, yes,
So,
absolutely.
speaking of data, we have some very exciting statistics. We're excited for you to tell us about all of the success that you found by winning all of these hearts and minds. And really, you arrived with a plan, and you planned your work, you worked your plan, and you saw some really great results. I'm excited to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I mean, in a really short time, as I said, we rolled out Seismic in May of 2023. And so the numbers that I'm about to share with you were at the year mark. So 1 year of Seismic and the platforms that we rolled out through it and programs that we rolled out through it, we were able to support decreasing new hire ramp time, new hire time to first opportunity by 47%. We decreased new hire time to first win by 11%, increased average deal size by 34%, increased our win rates by 11%, and this is the one our SVP of sales loves the most, 28% more sellers are hitting quota.
Amazing. Talk about every one of those stats as a drop the mic stat. I love that.
Yeah, it feels good.
Those would be incredible numbers in any environment, in any situation. I think it's even more impressive given what you came into, the fundamental changes going on, the complete reorientation of the go-to-market strategy. And you were also moving upmarket from a SMB focus to an enterprise focus. Am I right about that?
That's right. Actually, we've been kind of a medium enterprise business for a majority of our time. And now we're kind of dabbling in the opposite ends of it. So we're going emerging enterprise as well as large enterprise for the first time. And so we've got new sales teams to tackle those markets, new go-to-market strategy, and new partners, new enablement, new marketing, new messaging. It's all coming together all at once. And a lot of that comes through the enablement function.
I mean, that's a hard challenge. I mean, there are countless firms that built a degree of success in SMB and mid-market and then aspired to go up market and failed. Or maybe didn't fail, but it took them substantially longer than they anticipated. It's really quite remarkable that you managed to do all these things all at once and had like real mic drop statistics and outcomes after 1 year. Now, as amazing as your enablement function was and is, I know you made it really clear when you were speaking in New York, you didn't do it alone, that this truly was a partner. Tell us about what a few of the key other contributors outside of enablement were that helped this tremendous success story come together.
Yeah, absolutely. I know you said outside of enablement, but I am going to shout out to my team of rockstar enablers that I was able to bring on board within 6 months after being a one-woman show. So thank you to Stephanie Aylward and Mackenzie Wilson. They are my enablement team. But outside of enablement, I think the partnership is so key with product marketing and our product organization as we try to get our sellers to be able to articulate going to market with our solutions, our BPaaS solutions, instead of just professional services, which is what, again, they were so used to leading with. That was a big part of the first 6 to 9 months in this role, was just getting that foundational knowledge about speaking the language of OSV. And then again, as new marketing comes in, we have new brand messaging we all have to align around. So I'm attached at the hip with marketing, and it's been a growth experience for both of us as we're kind of learning about these new products and our new go-to-market strategies together. But it's been a great partnership, and we've seen obviously the fruits of that labor. And then of course, I have to be in touch with the sales leadership team on a regular basis. So those relationships are so important. These are your customers, the sales leaders, the customer success leaders, the people who are actually in the roles. So I have a steering committee around enablement. I make sure I do a quarterly readout of our enablement programs, the metrics related to them, and keep everybody kind of marching to the beat of the same drum. So again, we really are those bridge builders and the glue that keeps everything together.
And how about the individual sellers? How welcoming were they? It's a big change for them. Some of them were probably very successful selling what you used to sell in the ways you used to sell it. And now you're saying we're selling something different and we're selling it differently. Did you face any resistance from sellers themselves, or were they enthusiastically, pulling on the same oars?
I think around the transformation of our go-to-market strategy, there was a little bit of anxiety, but people were kind of excited, like, hey, we've been coming up in this BPaaS space for a while, and now we're ready to take the bull by the horns and drive with it. And I think they were excited, but obviously cautious, okay? Like, we are not able to do that former land and expand strategy, and these competitors are now partners. But I think they were excited, but a little anxious. And so when enablement came in, I was expecting to be kind of viewed as that big brother, pushing training. Sometimes we get a bad rap, but it was the opposite of that. And I think I was able to gain that confidence quickly by giving that one-stop shop for content and training with Seismic. They were all over the place for content before. So that was just that quick win out of the gate for me. Okay, now you have this one place to go. And by the way, there's great engagement tools within this that you've never had before. And we're just going to keep expanding on this amazing platform. And so, I mean, open arms, honestly, like people saying things to me about what were we doing without you? What could we do without enablement? What was life like before Seismic? Like so many great quotes that I can keep on my resume and my team's resume. And just, again, like astounding warmth around enablement, which has just been all the better for me.
That's amazing. That's such a great story. I feel like we've gotten from the beginning to the end. Tell us a little bit about the Juicy Center. If you want to share some of your trade secrets, give us a sense of like, what was the first initiative that you rolled out? Like, tell us a little bit about the tactical side of it. What did you include in that initiative? Where did the enablement kind of flavor get put in? Talk to us a little bit about that process side of it.
Sure. Well, they threw me into the eye of the tornado, and in my first week on the job, they gave me SKO to plan. And by the way, it's 8 weeks later. So that was my first big initiative at the same time that I was negotiating contract with Seismic and trying to roll out that and plan for that implementation. And so, yeah, I mean, SKO was, I think, the first time that I was able to show my stripes at this organization and really show them what kind of communicator that I am. So getting the key stakeholders on calls on a weekly cadence to talk through what do we want to get out of SKO? What sort of sessions are important to different roles within the sales organization? And just being that project manager around a very critical event, especially at such a critical time. Like this was the first SKO since we sold off professional services and people were buzzing. And so how do we keep that momentum going and also keep it positive? We don't want people to get negative about, what happens if. And so it was a really great project for me to sink my teeth into, and getting to meet everybody in person within the first 8 weeks of my job, especially as we're so remotely dispersed, was really cool. And I think that was the way that I was, again, able to gain that confidence quickly. They said it was the best SKO they've ever had. And this last year, we topped it again with the next best SKO they've ever had. So we just keep learning. And I think the key for me has always been just being a very open communicator and getting a variety of voices on meetings to make decisions collectively. I'm about smashing silos.
I love that, smashing silos. I think it's such a great story. You were talking at the beginning, we were talking about how important it is to align with the leadership of the organization to understand what their goals are, but you're also reinforcing that it's not just the organization, it's the key stakeholders at every level. And also not just the leaders, but also the independent, the feet on the ground individual contributors as well that you're aligning with and ensuring that you're delivering what they need and asking for what their needs are. That goes such a long way. I know, I'm sure that's a big key part of your relationship building is staying in touch. Tell me a little bit about your steering committee. You mentioned that you have you kind of report back to them quarterly about how things are going. Talk to us a little bit about what do you report back to them?
Yeah, so I actually have 2 quarterly cadences that I maintain. The first is that field level steering committee, and this is when we get that cross section of field facing roles on a call together. So we have representation from our solution consultants, our AEs, our business development reps, our sales managers are on there. Just a cross section of field facing roles are on the call. We also have a few folks from marketing, and then we dig into, here's what we delivered for you over the last quarter since we met last. And we want your feedback, and we open it up. We ask them, how did this work for you? We can see the data. Here's some of the data, but let's get that anecdotal feedback from you. Like, how did you feel about this? How did this work in the field? Can you give us some stories? And then we sort of shift gears a bit and talk about what we're planning to do over the next few months. What's on our roadmap? How would we prioritize these things? Hey, we have a few too many things on our plate. How would you ask us to prioritize them? And really making them feel like they're bought into or part of the decision-making process on the enablement that we're going to deliver them over the next quarter. And by doing that, we establish champions who are going to absolutely drive our programs amongst their peers. So that's the first one that we do. And then the other one is kind of my stakeholder reporting cadence. And so on a quarterly basis, we pull a ton of data. Thank you, Seismic Insights and Salesforce. And we get that enriched business data, and we talk about, hey, how are we actually doing from a data perspective? And we present this to our sales leadership, marketing leadership, alliances, again, a cross-section of stakeholders, not necessarily in the field, but the business stakeholders. And we leverage that to, again, make decisions on our roadmap and what we plan to present next and how we can address gaps. Okay, like content marketing has spent a lot of cycles building. Hey, it's not being used. Why is that? Should we address how and when we position this content? So that data is so key, and it not only informs what I'm doing, but what my other teams that I work with are going to do next.
I just wanted to tease out something that you just said that I thought was terrific in that the efforts and the success that you're seeing in enablement is very much related to the marketing team that's supporting you and even the product team that's supporting you. And you're able to offer feedback to them that helps them also level up what they're doing. And that team effort, just to keep reinforcing that message of how powerful your approach has been in pulling these people in as your partners, is a great thing. And I think sometimes that gets missed with enablement teams. Are kind of to their own detriment, whether it's their fault or the organizational culture. They end up in this like ivory tower, and they don't end up having those the depth of relationships that can impact positive across the board, not just the enablement team. Really cool. Great story.
Thank you.
Being first one in and building any function, but let's focus on enablement, building a function from scratch, that can be a transformational career opportunity that can absolutely accelerate you like nothing else. It can also be the opposite. I mean, it can be extremely hard. First one in, pulled in a lot of ways, a lot of potentially conflicting objectives and beliefs and biases about what this function ought to be. And you're this one person trying to tame that chaos and build something of real consequence. It's potentially extremely rewarding, potentially extremely hard. Having done it and having been so successful at it, what advice would you offer to someone walking into a similar situation? Even if it isn't with all the go-to-market changes and partnership changes, just being first one in to build enablement. What would you advise them to focus on? And what landmines would you advise them to avoid?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I would start with don't boil the ocean. I mean, if you're building an enablement function from the ground up, or just entering in a new enablement team and want to make your mark, drive strategically towards a handful of goals that, again, align to leadership and stakeholder goals. I think you'll be a lot more successful if you don't try to do it all at once. I mean, for me, coming from an established enablement organization, it was really easy for me to want to try to do everything that I'd seen done before, but I had to remind myself on a regular basis that OSV is a lot different from Citrix, different industry, much smaller organization, different go-to-market strategy, different people. How do I got to connect with their culture and their expectations and their pace. And so I think it's really important, again, to remember a handful of things that you want to do. And then once you've checked that box, check back in with those stakeholders. Ask them, how'd I do? Here's the metrics I have, but what's your feedback for me? Okay, let's look forward to the next set of goals. Are we still in alignment with what we talked about previously? All right, I'm going to go to work and engage the right people now. But those executive and stakeholder check-in points are so key. And again, I would say don't fall into the trap of trying to do too much all at once. And what happens in enablement, this happens to all of us, we do find ourselves in situations where a lot is coming at us all at once. And I refer to them often as my dumpster fires. And so like we have to, rein those in and control them and say, does this new thing that's come across my desk, and they inevitably do on a regular basis, align to one of those pillars? And if it doesn't, can we kind of finagle it too, so that we can support the business? Or then we have to have that more difficult conversation. What projects have to drop so that we can pick this one up? And not be afraid about saying, hey, we can't do everything. We can't do everything well. We have to just pick a few that we want to do very well and make an impact. And that's when we're able to get to those impactful numbers that I shared earlier, by being selective about what we do.
All right, Nicole, let's wrap up with a few lightning round questions for you. My first question for you is, what do you think is going to change in our enablement worlds over the next 18 months?
Yeah, I think you're probably going to hear this a lot as you ask this question, but AI is going to change things over the next 18 months, I think, in a good way. For me, I'm excited about the ways in which AI can alleviate some of the more administratively burdensome tasks that my team has to undertake on a regular basis, and also our sales customers of enablement. How can we take some of that administrative work off their plate through AI? So I'm very excited about the future supported by AI.
What's not going to change?
Unexpected pivots. In enablements, this is the story of our lives. Unexpected pivots come and go on a regular basis. How we handle them is key. So for me, I go back to what I was saying earlier about always going back to those enablement pillars, checking in with our executives and our stakeholders. But I think we can expect pivots and chaos from time to time, and just being that glue that gets everybody on the same page and builds the bridges between teams to communicate is where we're going to come in handy.
Awesome. All right. Our last question is, what would you say is the best piece of advice you've ever received?
That's a great question. And I go back to a small coffee table book that was on my parents' coffee table growing up, and it was called Don't Sweat the Small Stuff. And it's all small stuff. And I reference that so often in my personal and my professional life. Fortunate that I'm not in a job where I'm under fire or saving lives. We have to put that perspective in place all the time. And in enablement, again, I spoke about those dumpster fires and the pivots and the chaos. People come at us with things that they are fired up about, and how can we help them? So I think it's just reminding them that, hey, let's see where this fits in our current list of priorities and goals. Let's talk to the right people to see when we can get this project going. But don't sweat the small stuff is absolutely the best piece of advice I've ever received.
I love that. Awesome.
Nicole, thank you so much for joining us. You are an absolute star in your space. You are an incredible evangelist for the profession and for the function of enablement. And you're also really inspiring. You just have there's a certain calm to you. I don't know if Amber, if you get the same thing, but I just get the sense that Nicole's got it all managed. And you know what? I think I could too. Like it's like, I think that if I kind of follow Nicole's lead, I could have it all managed as well. You've got a very thoughtful, strategic, collaborative approach, and you've got the results to back it up. And we really appreciate you taking some time to share that with our listeners and our viewers.
It's been a pleasure, and I appreciate your kind words, Steve and Amber.
Thanks for joining us on the Enablement Edge. We're on YouTube and all your favorite podcast providers. See you next time.
The Enablement Edge is brought to you by the team at Seismic. Seismic is the global leader in enablement, keeping organizations on the cutting edge of engaging customers, enabling teams, and igniting revenue growth. You can learn more at seismic.com.